Hello. In this screencast, we're going to get into how the French Revolution unfolds on not one but two different fronts. The first is going to be the National Assembly, formed in the summer of 1789. The National Assembly, you may remember, is the group that forms most of the paper victories, the new laws, the new declarations, all the things that point France toward establishing a new government. The second front on which the revolution is going to happen will be in the street, where the people will have their own idea of what constitutes revolution and how everything's going to unfold. Of course, the National Assembly gets started at the tennis court oath in the summer of 1789, basically dissolving the old Estates General. The Assembly quickly started to do things that asserted its own power as opposed to that of the king. For one thing, the National Assembly abolished the old privileges that went along with being a noble or a member of the church. They also, for the first time, levied taxes on the nobles in an effort to cure some of the economic problems that eventually led to the Estates General and the National Assembly in the first place. Most famously, the Assembly created a Declaration of the Rights of Man, based in large part on the American Declaration of Independence, ironically, a document that was successful in large part because of help from Louis XVI himself. The Declaration was based in many of those same ideas as well. The National Assembly also set it up so that even the church, the first estate, was now subject to the will of the people, allowing church officials to be elected by popular vote, an act called the Civil Constitution of Clergy. Finally, as they had promised in the tennis court oath, the Assembly started to create a new constitution, but this would take a couple of years. These actions by themselves, once again, paper victories. They're not going to solve all of France's problems. Two F words, not those two, but two others, can answer some of the issues. First, famine. All the laws that the Assembly could pass would not put food in people's mouths and bread on their tables. Faced between the choice of a constitution and a cheeseburger, starving people will almost always pick the latter. The second F word was fear. We saw with Jean-Paul Marat how rumors, gossip, one report in a newspaper could create a mob scene. In this case, rumors were that the king and nobles were going to seize peasant crops and peasant land, and that drove the people to more extreme action. Things came to a head in July of 1789 when Louis XVI fired Jacques Necker. You may remember that Necker was the finance minister who had suggested taxing the nobility in the first place. The people found Necker's ouster totally unacceptable and decided to take action. After acquiring several thousand muskets, the people then needed gunpowder. For it, they went to the Bastille, a notorious prison in Paris where political prisoners were said to be held and tortured. The objectives were twofold. One, free political prisoners, and two, seize weapons and gunpowder. Realistically, there were only about 6 or 7 prisoners in the Bastille at the time of the raid, and there wasn't that much gunpowder to be taken. The results were, however, pretty drastic. The guards of the Bastille were murdered, beheaded, and their heads placed on pikes and marched around the city of Paris. Second, it served as a major wake-up call to the French monarchy. The people were going to act with or without the Assembly, and they were going to be heard. Throughout the rest of the summer, there were peasant uprisings which reminded a lot of people of the famous Jacquerie. The Jacquerie were peasant uprisings that had happened during the 1300s, in which peasant mobs burned and killed many nobles. So you saw a lot of these uprisings happen throughout the summer. Here's a picture of the Bastille being overtaken by the mob. To this day, July 14th is celebrated in France as Bastille Day, comparable to our 4th of July. In effect, it's the French Independence Day. This illustration shows what happened to another government official during the summer of 1789. Monsieur Foulon, whose name you see here, was a very unpopular royal official. In fact, so unpopular that when told by the people that they were starving to death because they didn't have enough bread, he advised them to graze on the grass by the side of the road. The mob responded by eventually tracking down Foulon, even though he had tried to fake his own death to throw off their trail. When Foulon was finally found, as you can see, he was suffering the same fate as the Bastille guards. Head here, body down here. And although you can't see it here, every orifice, mouth, ears, and nose, stuffed with grass. Supreme irony here. Again, the people are definitely taking the revolution in a much different direction than the National Assembly might have accounted for. The fall of 1789 was the time of the Mother's March or Bread March. Starting out as a few hundred women from the fish markets of Paris, whose children were starving, eventually the mob becomes 20,000 people traveling from Paris to Versailles. This is a pretty significant event, not just because of the size of the group, but because a lot of them were women. Prices of living, inflation, constitutional issues, feudal privileges, taxes, that's one thing. These were angry women whose children were starving to death, not people you really want to get in the way with. It's during this time that Marie Antoinette supposedly responds to the mob's pleas for bread with the statement, "Let them eat cake." Unfortunately, that's probably just an urban legend, but it does display how the monarchy was pretty much either ignorant or totally uncaring about what was happening to the people. Either way, it doesn't make the monarchy look good, and it just gave the mob and the population one more reason to hate Marie Antoinette. The results of the Mother's March went like this. More guards were in fact killed. Their heads marched to Paris on pikes. Once again, to tell you how seriously and how dangerously off-center this revolution is starting to get, the heads were actually made up with makeup on the 12-mile march, not unlike when Foulon's head was stuffed with grass in the summer of 1789. The royal family was marched to Paris so that the people could keep an eye on them. One more piece of irony. Given how the kings of France had built Versailles to kind of keep an eye on the nobles, now the people were forcing the king and queen to leave Versailles in order to keep a better eye on them. Once they get back to Paris, the revolution is going to unfold in other ways, and we'll take a look at that in our next screencast.